Mais hey, salut tout le monde, on se retrouve pour une nouvelle vidéo. On est encore dans la semaine des 4 jeudis, des jeux de simulation de démos gratuits. On va essayer Autopsy Simulator. Ce qu'il faut faire, ça a l'air dégueulasse. J'aime pas trop ça en plus, mais bon. Autopsy est un jeu de simulation, des éléments d'horreur dans lequel le joueur peut examiner un cadavre et sur les bases de résultats déterminer la cause de son décès. On a l'air d'être en fond d'être un schiste là, je sais plus trop. Wow, putain, ça a l'air dégueu, man. Ouais, ça a l'air un peu deg. On va essayer ça. T'es pas à lâcher un pouce bleu, un abonnement, c'est gratis. Puis, c'est ça. Autopsy Simulator. Oh, il y a un jeu qui a pas l'air à se lancer. Ah ouais. Ah ouais. Ça, c'est jusqu'au 28 février. La semaine où ils font les démos gratuites. Les démos de beaucoup de jeux, en général. Je sais pas si le jeu est en français. Ça serait cool, parce que moi, pour mon anglais, on a de la misère. Ouais, non? Ah ben non. Maudit. Attends, y a-tu du son, man? Ah, si, ah oui. J'essaie de pas le mettre trop fort déjà en partant. Nouveau! Go! On est nouveau dans le game, on essaye ça. Ah man, je sens que ça va être dégueulasse. Je sens que ça va être archi dégueu, man. Normalement aussi une démo dure entre 1 heure et demie, mais je pense que je vais pas. Ça va dépendre de comment ça va aller. Là. Parce que j'ai remarqué que mes autres vidéos aussi duraient d'une heure. Tu sais, je faisais comme toute la démo au complet. Fait que je vais peut-être essayer de diminuer genre dans des 20 minutes, 25 minutes, une demi-heure.
No, do not call me anymore. It's none of my business.
Oh, franchement pas, man. Tu sais, on va essayer de. Ok, c'est quoi le fouche?
Oh, the cops from Steven's visit yesterday. I don't think he likes my coffee. He barely took a sip.
Putain, man, c'est quoi ça? Troisième s'ouvre pas.
How am I supposed to record a lecture for the students now? Feeling completely broken. I borrowed it from Steven. Since Alice died, Steven is the only person I trust. I borrowed it from Steven.
Les bruits, man, c'est une scène. Oh, je peux l'essayer, ça. C'est cool, ça, man. Just remember saying you. Oh, on est allé voir Rio Smith, man. Oh, malade. En 91. 16 décembre 91. Oh, bordel. James Dew. Holiday Trip. Vodka.
Oh, I'm gonna go nuts if I don't take my pills.
Huh? Look for your pills. Go to the bad room. J'avais des sons, des pilules, gros. Je les ai trouvés, mes pilules. J'ai pas remarqué, hein.
It's for my guests, but they seem to never drink or say anything when they visit me.
Ils vont aux toilettes, hein. T'es en 91, est-ce que je peux voir?
I feel like an exhibit here sometimes. Fuck. Where are my meds?
Je sais pas, gros. Hein. Non, là. Ah, cul sec comme ça, tu.
Alright. Now I can go get the camera.
Prepare to record for the student. Go to storage. J'enregistre une vidéo pour les étudiants, man.
It's locked.
Sitting room. Oh putain, non, hein, un cadavre. C'est quoi? Storage. Storage.
Oh, this place is starting to look like a garbage dump rather than a storage room. Repairs, repairs. The cheapest paint rollers from the supermarket.
Je cherche une caméra. C'était quoi ça? Caméra vidéo.
Those are propane and butane gas bottles.
Ah, là.
Well, I hope I won't forget to press the record button this time.
Prends-toi des cassettes, les gros. Okay. Go to Autopsy room. Ah, fuck.
Let's move on straight to our deceased. I'm wondering how the new tripod is going to work. Just frame it properly and...
Prepare to record for this. Start.
Oh, this should be fine. November 21st, 1991. Time, 8:43 p.m. Recording for medical students from the University of Missouri. The autopsy is conducted by Jack Hammond. Ladies and gentlemen, it is always worth having a look at the files before conducting the autopsy. That is where we can find all kinds of clues to what could have potentially happened to the deceased.
Non, je suis pas bien. Look at the disease file.
Well, who do we have here today?
Mention
the rookie mistakes. Oh yeah, that's right. That's my order to sensify you for a few issues. First, due to the fact that in the process of revealing and securing forensic traces, interference that changes the primary condition happens. The photographic documentation plays a huge role in the entire process of examination. Then, the body needs to be placed on its back on the autopsy table. The pathomorphologist stands on the left-hand side of the body. Third, very rarely but still, the cause of death remains unknown if all the tests come out negative. That's the so-called white autopsy. Now remember that it can also happen. Found on the outskirts of a parking lot near a gas station, where he often begged and insistently offered to clean the windows of cars that were leaving the station. The body found on the outskirts of a parking lot near a gas station, where he often begged and insistently offered to clean the windows of cars that were leaving the station. The body was found in a dry field drain. A frequent cause of traumatic deaths among the elderly is the various types of accidents. including traffic accidents or falling down the stairs. The body was spotted by a station worker during the morning shift. At first, he thought that someone had thrown rain boots and a coat in a nearby ditch. It took him a moment to recognize a human body laying on its back. Signs of libation could be found around the dead body. Empty bottles, traces of an attempt to start a fire, and a scattered makeshift blanket. The deceased is locally known as Old Toby, homeless and unemployed for at least a couple years. He had gotten into fights and had been bullied by the problematic youth of the town. He was that type of... The body was found at 7 o'clock by Sheriff Matthew Thompson. White male, 76 kilograms, found on the outskirts of the deceased. The body was found on the out. The deceased. The body found on the out. The body found on the body was found. The deceased, homeless and unemployed for at least a couple years. He had gotten into...
Find and put the
glove on. Damn gloves.
Oh. What bang?
They've been here for so long they even smell like they're dead. Maybe it's time to say goodbye. Now we can get to work. We're going to need the camera. It should be here somewhere.
Find the camera. Better God, is it? Huh? I'll find the camera. Où est là, man, la
I must have
caméra?
left it in one of the drawers.
Huh? Où ta caméra, man? Find the camera.
We'll get to making notes on the board. I don't know how I could have worked without this gadget before.
Ben gros, là, la petite caméra, man, qu'est-ce que je fasse? Find the caméra. Je peux pas commencer l'autopsie. Comment find the caméra, man? C'est qui jase, lui?
We'll get to making notes on the board.
Barnac. Je fouille partout ici.
Let's follow the procedure and prepare photo documentation. We must follow the top-down rule. Luckily, we don't have to take pictures of the clothes this time. We are only focusing on the body. Let's keep in mind it's all about the legibility, not the perfect frame. Before we start searching for traces on the deceased's body, we have to take a main picture that goes in the files.
Take a top, inspection. Take a top-down view photo of the
Voila! Now we move on to the next step. Trace search.
Find spot of this body.
We're going to need better zoom here. And that's perfect.
Ugh.
People affected by homelessness most often die from accidents, alcohol abuse, or they freeze to death. Unfortunately, both suicide and homicide are also quite common.
Gros, c'est dégueulasse, hein? Mais son pied, man, c'est archi deg, ça, non?
Well, you don't have to stand close to be able to smell a strong odor of alcohol and other discharges. There's nothing left to say. Old Toby didn't spare himself.
Begin the autopsy.
While taking the photos, some entries that could be potentially lethal caught my attention. Let's take a closer look using the magnifying glass.
Selected confused. Take the menus from the tool wheel. Tab to clipboard. Oh, j'ai envie de gerber, man. En tout cas, faut que je fasse, gros. Take the manifair. It's too well. Manifair.
There are frostbite marks all over the deceased's body. Although they are most visible on the tips of his fingers, they can be recognized by the very specific color of the skin. However, the hands tell us much more. An old wound that hadn't healed properly. It must have been some kind of burn or other injury. Nevertheless, it has nothing to do with the potential cause of death. That's something interesting. While making photographic documentation, ecchymosis can be seen on the deceased man's head. The appearance indicates the intravital nature of the wound. We'll come back later to see if everything is alright with the brain. By the look of his feet, I assume Toby must have worn uncomfortable and dinky shoes for quite a while. However, such wounds have nothing to do with his death. What do we have here?
Examine the marker spot.
An old wound that hadn't healed properly. It must have been some kind of burn or other injury. Nevertheless, it has nothing to do with the potential cause of death. By the look of his feet, I assume Toby must have worn uncomfortable and dinky shoes for quite a while. However, such wounds have nothing to do with his death. It could be freezing to death. The condition of the head tells us it could have been a fatal accident.
Freezing, fatal, fail.
Yeah, the odor can be the result of alcohol intoxication.
Il était trop sous, il s'est éclaté la gueule. Il est tombé, je sais pas.
At this point, that's all I can do based on all traces on the body of the deceased. The inside should tell me much more. Let's move back to the body.
Grab the right hand to perform the...
Now let's check the level of muscle tension. This will allow us to establish time of death. Let's raise the deceased's hand. And then let go. The stronger the rigor mortis gets, the greater the resistance from the muscles will be. As you can see, the hand falls loose. The rigor mortis has already subsided. We can then assume that the time of death stated in the files is correct. Let's grab a scalpel.
Oh no. Take the scalpel from the stool. Oh shit.
You can boldly cut with the scalpel. It won't hurt him no more. We always start with the neck and move down towards the symphysis pubis. The incision should be deep. Next, we separate the skin and prepare to remove the ribs.
Ah! Open the chest. Merde! Je peux pas, ok. Arc! Allô? Je peux pas ouvrir la...
The adipose tissue has an
Oh,
intense
gros,
yellow
ouais,
hue.
c'est
As you probably
dégueulasse!
already guessed, we're going to need the scissors.
Oh, man, sérieux? C'est quoi qu'il veut, man? Je veux de body, moi, je me suis dit que loopers, c'est loopers, man, c'est la drogue. Ouais, je sais quoi qu'il fait, lui. Remove the rib cage. Sérieux?
After removing both cartilage and bone tissues, we are actually interested in two things that you can see at the very first glance. The lack of organ congestion means that, although the deceased was cold, hypothermia wasn't the cause of death.
Brewing as the cause of the death. Take the minor fur from the tube, la loupe, la tranchée, du poumon. L'estomac.
We can eliminate freezing as the cause of death.
On peut éliminer le freeze. Ok. Ben, tu veux que je fasse quoi? C'est bizarre parce que je peux rien cliquer. Ok. Take out the log and examine them. Ok. Arc! Prends ça, lui, comme si rien n'était! Ok, ouais. Puis il le remet à sa place.
The deceased smoked like a chimney. Let's take a closer look. We see widespread black and tarry deposits caused by smoking cigarettes. Despite the tragic condition of the lungs, they are not the cause of death.
Cigarette dans la marde. Je viens de voir que quand tu bouges, à un moment donné, ben là, ok non, peut-être pas. Yark, il arrache la tranchée, lui, direct comme ça, mon gars. Take out the log and examine them. Ouais, ben ça va. J'ai beau l'examiner, gros. Oh, ça a bougé ou quoi?
The deceased smoked like a chimney. Let's take a closer look. We see widespread black and tarry deposits caused by smoking cigarettes. Despite the tragic condition of the lungs, they are not the cause of death.
Take out the log and examine them. Ben, ok. J'ai fait ce que j'avais à faire, non? Il y a deux affaires, hein?
Now we need to go grab the syringe.
Syringe. Seringue.
At this point, we need to test the level of blood alcohol concentration of the deceased.
Dans le cœur. Oui, je take blood.
We move on to collecting blood from the heart. 5 milliliters from the left ventricle should do it.
Dans l'intestin.
Now, we prick the bladder and draw about 10 milliliters of fluid.
Dans l'œil.
We also collect the fluid from the deceased to determine the level of alcohol concentration in the vitreous humor. Keep in mind that you have to set the right time and speed on both knobs before running the centrifuge. Our samples may break into pieces due to the centrifugal force if we set up the wrong coordinates. I myself am terrible with numbers because I suffer from dyscalculia, which is why I always keep the appropriate coordinates at hand.
Take the nut from the pin board. test de blood alcohol concentration. Ah, mais je l'ai pas parti là. Start mixer. Non, mais je sais pas combien de temps. AED. Take the nut from the pinboard. Ah, ça doit être écrit le. Ah. Stian, genre j'ai checké. Time 40 minutes, speed 75%. Time 40 minutes. Speed. Oh. 40 minutes, speed. Ah! Speed à 75%. What?
Damn it. If something goes to shit, it's all the way. That's probably the blown fuses again. Hold up. I must have had a flashlight somewhere. And I was hoping to clock out early today. What was that?
What the
Here
fuck?
we go.
Gros, j'ai un frisson, man.
Yeah, it's definitely the fuses.
C'était quoi ça, gros?
Right goes first, left next. Voila. Where's that unbearable noise coming from?
Gros, c'est quoi ça?
That's strange. I'm pretty sure I closed the window.
Ouais, moi aussi, je pensais qu'elle était fermée, man, cette fenêtre-là.
The homeless probably misses me already. I borrowed it from Stephen. Since Alice died, Stephen is the only person I trust. Where were we? Oh yeah, the blood alcohol concentration. Alright, let's see what we've got here.
T'as fini?
Well, everything is telling us that the BAC, blood alcohol concentration, is high, hence the smell we're getting from the deceased. Still, to be 100% sure, I have to send the samples to the lab. Unfortunately, I don't have the equipment to conduct a detailed analysis here.
C'est tout? Take out the stomach and examine it. Arrk.
Now let's take a closer look at the stomach. As expected, the stomach has no major external damage. In this case, further inspection is no use. We must cut him open.
Quoi? Faut que j'ouvre l'estomac, man! Gros, c'est dégueulasse ce jeu-là, frère! Ouh. Comment ça fonctionne? Qu'est-ce que je l'ai raté. Yark. Move close and examine it.
That's interesting. In addition to a large amount of gas and liquid, the stomach also contains small amounts of yellow, grayish food content resembling some kind of meat. Either our deceased hadn't eaten in days, or some of the bulk of his stomach had found a way out. Oh, it couldn't have been suffocated. Now we take...
Take out the earth.
At first glance, the heart looks fine. The pulmonary trunk and aorta seem to be in good condition. There are no pathological changes that have contributed to our Toby's death. Well, once we've got the body ticked off, we can move on to the head.
Take the shot. Yeah.
Let's take the autopsy saw to cut through the skull to cleave it in two. Remember, the skull, not the saw.
Ah, ta gueule, gros, faut pas que je découpe son cerveau. Oh, Access the brain. Yo, man.
Anyway, we will start dissecting the brain from the occipital lobe. In this way, the brain's dura mater is slowly revealing itself.
Examine the brain.
After the basic examination, you can see that the cerebral gyri in both brain hemispheres are symmetric and the bumps between them are clear. So far, so good. The hematoma seems to have had no effect on the organ we're examining. Let's check its transection. Moving on to the incision. Holding a knife with a long, narrow blade in your dominant hand, cut the cranial nerves on both sides, pulling the brain towards you.
Sérieux, man?
Remember, just one small fragment examined under the magnifying glass is enough to dispel or confirm our doubts. We then take the fragment of the brain to the tray and, literally and figuratively, go over it with a fine-tooth comb.
Fragment under the... Fuck, man. Ouais, tout est beau, man.
Just as I initially suspected were the fatal accident as well.
Ah, c'est dégueulasse, man. Faut que t'aimes ça, hein, mais gros. Take out de trancher et examine-la. Pour vrai, c'est bien fait. En français, ça sera encore meilleur. C'était pas lâché un pouce bleu, c'est gratuit.
Same as we did with the stomach. External inspection didn't tell us anything. Now the scalpel comes into play. While cutting a small organ such as the trachea, we must perform a precise incision. To be able to cut with the very tip of the blade, we must hold the knife as if it was a stylus. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've got it. Based on the report and preliminary documentation, it is safe to assume that the deceased passed out after consumption of alcohol and then fell asleep on his back. Then the gastric contents refluxed and flooded the airways, causing death. That's why we don't forget about the recovery position at dorm parties. And now it's all clear. The death was caused by suffocation.
Cause de l'asphyxiation, disease, teach, filed with fluid and stomach content. Il s'est asphyxié, man, dans son sommeil, je pense. Je sais pas trop, man. Ouf. Go to the general card. Finish filing the documentation. Go to the general card. The general card. So. Finish filing and the documentation. Je pense pas que c'est ça.
Mentioned the rookie the body was found at 7 o'clock. I don't know how it could have worked without this gadget before. We'll get to making notes on the board. We now come to the deceased's neck.
Ah, not down because the death. All drawing and the withdrawal of the stomach content to teacher and aspiration track for it. Sing ça, mon gars. Tu fais ça, man, hein?
It went quite smoothly today. I'm about to get off.
On dirait vraiment une vraie signature, hein? Malade, c'est ça mon nom. Close the chest. Ah, sérieux? Tu bougé, man? Ah, mon vieux.
In order to bring the chest of our deceased back to its initial state, at least to a small extent, we must take the needle in our hand.
Je suis désolé. Take the showing needle. Faut que je le rattache.
We sewed the deceased using the baseball stitch technique. This stitching method is very strong and quick to do.
Un peu comme pas précis. Au téléphone.
I should probably get to that. I'm coming. This is Dr. Jack Hanman. Please leave a message.
Good evening. How are you? How are you? How are you?
What the f is that supposed to be? I'll finish the stitching and I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Aïe aïe aïe, man. C'est quoi ce jeu-là, man? Sérieux, j'ai ça. Il y a quelque chose qui va se passer, frère.
What the fuck?
Le cadavre il est plus là. Le cadavre il est plus là, man. C'est comme ça que ça se finit, man. Je suis content que ça soit fini, man. Je suis vraiment content que ça soit fini, man. Mais c'est quoi ce jeu-là, man? C'est quoi ce putain de jeu, man? J'ai ce jeu, man. J'ai ce jeu, man. Pour vrai, j'haïs ça, man. Des jeux d'horreur de même, dégueu, et que. Ah, j'ai des frissons, man. Je suis pas bien, man. Pour vrai, il est cool le jeu. Ouais. Non, c'est prenant, c'est dégueulasse. Ceux qui aiment ça, tant mieux. Moi, ils bouffent. Fait que, ben, pour vrai, il est pas trop long. Je pensais que... C'est un bon petit démo, ça, tranquille. En tout cas, merci d'avoir regardé la vidéo. N'hésitez pas à lâcher un pouce bleu, un commentaire, peu importe. Ben, un gros merci. Puis, on se revoit bientôt pour une nouvelle vidéo. Faites attention à vous autres. Ciao tout le monde. Peace!